All right, it's 6 a.m. Good morning. The markets move, the policies shift, and people's lives are changed. This is where we make sense of it all. I'm Sifiso Ngumalo, and here's what we are tackling today on the show. Two conversations that go to the heart of Eswatini's economic future. First, we take you inside the SADC real-time cross-settlement system, which is a platform that has already processed an astonishing 17.56 trillion emalangeni in transactions. We want to understand what it means for regional trade, what it means for currency integration, and the safety of our money in an age of cyber risk. Our economist, Sanales B, is ready to join us to tackle and answer these questions for us via our Zoom video link at 6:30 this morning. And then at 7:30, we turn to the Employment Bill and Section 129, the clause that could outlaw triangular employment. Business Eswatini warns of 20,000 jobs that are at risk, hundreds of millions in liabilities, and industries like sugar, forestry, and security pushed to the brink. Chief Executive Nathi Dlamini is going to be here with us to make the case for regulation over prohibition, as well as the stakes that could not be higher. All ahead on the program today, two crucial conversations, one program, so stay with us for both these conversations. But before that, we want to look at our leading headlines this morning across print. All right, now our first story. This is the Eswatini Observer front page. Mthandeni to get pardon. Former Ngwembisi Member of Parliament Mthandeni Dube is amongst other inmates that are expected to get royal pardon starting from next week as a prerogative of Mercy Committee finalizes names. On another one, CSC renews embattled Alpheus Ngumalo's contract, while government buys 188,800 FMD doses for Lubombo region. We turn to the back end of this publication. These are your sports headlines. And the top story there, drama at Mbabane Swallows as Newman Karas shown the exit. Players told to find new clubs by management on Tuesday evening. In other news, clubs are to have a bite on a 6.1 billion emalangeni. Those are teams that release players to Sihlangu for the 2026 World Cup qualifiers. They will have a bite from FIFA's USD 355 million, about 6.159 billion emalangeni payment to clubs. In another story, stop calling us names. That is the Premier League of Eswatini Chairman Polycarp Posega Dlamini, who has strongly warned Mbabane Swallows Pty Ltd members to avoid dragging their name in the mud, as they were accusing them for no reason. The last story, 1.7 million emalangeni incentives for Nsingizini opponents. That is the CAF envoys and Nsingizini Hotspurs that will need to be at their very best when they take on Zimbabwean side Simba Bora. As they leave for Botswana, Nsingizini there at the bottom of this publication sports section. We turn now to the Eswatini daily news. We start with the front page where the Prime Minister unveils bold strategy to combat drought and build regional resilience. And then in another story, members of parliament call for probe into allegedly corruption-riddled RSTP, while the public sector's accounting program has been launched at UNESCO. 21 million emalangeni mobile tuberculosis trucks, 12 motorbikes to enhance fight against tuberculosis. Those are the front page headlines. We look at the back end now. And the top story, it's a logo split. Eswatini Football Association, EFA, part ways with outspoken Croatian mentor Zdravko Logarisic 2 months before expiry of his one-year contract. And another one, Birds suspends Karas and Piliso, while Manchester City is apparently not Champions League contenders. That's your paper on this morning. We have our ad break now. We'll be back with our Siswati news.
Eswatini TV has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Eswatini Communications Commission. We are committed to reporting news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that does not amount to hate speech or the description of gratuitous violence or explicit sex. For any complaints of our programming, please contact us on 2411-9600 or email info@eswatinitv.co.za. You can also contact the Eswatini Communications Commission on 2406-7000 or write a letter to ECCOM on PO Box 7811 Mbabane. Email address is info@ecom.org.za.
Phinze ngikwamukele ehlelweni nathi tindzaba tesiswati kude ke live lelingaphansi kwenhlangano yakaSADC leliyawuphinze liyilwe yodva indzaba yetehlakalo tanoma ngoliphi luhlobo lokhu kuvakele ngemhlonishwa ndvunankhulu Russell Mmiso Dlamini ngesikhatsi yetfula ngalokusemtsetfweni tinhlelo letintsatfu tekulwa netehlakalo i-Drought Center of Excellence IB SADC Platform for Disaster Risk Reduction Management kanye ne-Eswatini Center of Excellence. Tonkeke letinhlelo ndvunankhulu tetfule emhlanganweni lochubekako wakaSADC wekubuka ke tindlela tekumelana netehlakalo ikakhulukati isomiso mhlangano lobanjelwe eHappy Valley eZulwini.
Live la Kangwane alusikhohlwa somiso lesahlasela ngeminyaka wa 2015-2016. Leso somiso leseko sabanga kusilive lahlekelwa imali lefikako ku 3.84 billion emalangeni. La Kangwane lasukumele etulo ngokusebenzisa NDMA kwakhathi inhlelo tekumelana netehlakalo lokufaka ekhatsi sona somiso. Lawo ke ngemave emhlonishwa ndunankhulu lawethule nekethula ngalokusemthethweni luhlelo lwakaSADC lokulwa netehlakalo kanye ne-Center of Excellence yelive la Kangwane lelitalisebenzisa kuhlela ke tinhlelo tekulwa netehlakalo letahlukene eveni.
Our efforts do not stand on their own. We are guided by global frameworks such as the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction, which calls on us to understand risk, strengthen risk governance, invest in resilience, and build back better. We are also inspired by the 2015 Paris Agreement, which urges action to limit global warming while supporting communities to adapt to climate change.
Lisekela lamabhalane wenhlangano yakaSADC lichazile ukuthi lesifundza sitimisele ekuqinisa tinhlelo taso tekubona tehlakalo tiseta ema-early warning systems ngekuhambisana ne-Windhoek Declaration. Libhange lakamhlaba lidumise SADC nelive laseSwatini ngekuba nalolu hlelo lokusebenzisana kwemava kaSADC ekutweni netehlakalo. Kusele iminyaka lesihlanu kuphela kuthe emave emhlaba abuke ukuthi sekahambe kangakanani ekushicileleni isivumelwano sakamhlaba lekuthiwa yi-Sendai Framework. Imigomo yonke yelive laseSwatini ihambisana ngqo nemagola kamhlaba etentuthuko lekhonsako lekuligoli lesibili, lesi-13 nelesi-15 lagcile kakhulu ukuthi la Kangwane alikhona ekukhicida kudla lokwenele liphindze libe netinhlelo tekumelana nesimo selitulu liyinakeke nendzaba yekongiwa kwemanti. Kubika lingithini Gule ngiseHappy Valley eZulwini.
Ni landvunankhulu umhlonishwa Kusile Dladla seliye eMaya Palace kuyawethula emavi ekulila labuya eSwatini la enkosini yesive sema-Ashanti oTomfuo Seyitutu. Lokhu ke kulandzela kushona kwendlovukazi yalesive asenthema Nana Konadu Yidomo wesithathu. Liphini landvunankhulu belihamba nelibandla lelifaka ekhatsi indvuna yetinkhundla umhlonishwa Sikhumbuzo Dlamini umfana Nkosi Phuhlaphi kanye nesikhulu wenzabankhulu Simelane.
Liphini landvunankulu umhlonishwa Kusile Dladla nelibandla latfunywe nalo lapha eGhana abahlanganyele nesive sema-Ashanti lebesibulala inyoka eMaya Palace elangeni lesithatfu lemsebenti wekufihla indlovukazi yema-Ashanti. Liphini landvunankulu lelitfunywe ingwenyama licale ngekugcwalisa incwadzi yekulila khona kulesigodlo. iqhubekile yayohlanganyela nalesive nenkosi yaso othumfosi yethuthu wesibili longene ngelisiko lakhona. Liphini laNdvunankhulu nelibandla lalo libese liyawuvusela enkosini yema-Ashanti lapho efike endlulisa khona umlayeto lobuya khona eveni leSwatini. Ulandzele nemntwanenkosi Phuhlapi naye wayawuvusela enkosini yesive zema-Ashanti. Ngelisiko lema-Ashanti indlovukazi nayifihlwa kuthiwa iya e-village lapho iyawulinza khona. Lokhu kutawendiwa ngalesine lokutawuba lusuku lwekugcina lwemsebenti wekufihla make wesive sema-Ashanti. Lobikako ngithemkosi Mavimbela eKumasi eGhana.
Babesiphohlongo bantfu labahlolwe batfolakala ukuthi banesifo sesifuba sengati i-TB embukisweni walonyaka. Luhlangothi lwaka-TB lemukele emaloli lamane lanebuchwephesha be-AI netitududu letingu-12 kucinisa-ke kusebenta kwalolu hlangothi.
Leti dududu nalamaloli kubite imali lengu-21 million emalangeni kanzi kutawusita kwenta umsebenti weluhlangothi lwaka-TB lube melula. Lamaloli-ke anebuchwephesha lobusetulu be-artificial intelligence njengoba konke lokuba sesibhedlela nakuhlolwa sifo sesifuba sengati kukhona kuleloli. Induna yetemphilo umhlonishwa wamduduzi Mathebula ithi bahlose ukuthi bafinyelele esiveni ekuhloleni sifo sesifuba senkati. Induna yithi-ke lamaloli aphinze abe neluhlangothi lolungalayisha loyo lodzinga lusito kungadingakali ukuthi kubuye lenye imoto angaphinze angene kuyo leloli.
Aphinze futhi akhone ukuthi noma ngabe kude gesi kulendzawo ayakhona ngoba aphinze abe solar panels la ngetulu ayakhona ukuthi aphinze asebente ngaphandle kwagesi. Lekusho ukuthi i-clinic iphelele mane ngilehamba. Kuningi lesikwendako sitakwanzisa lokusebenta kanjena kuzama ukunciphisa nalesimo sema-facilities noma-ke sivale le gap yokuthi nakuseke ema-facilities dudane sikhone lokumikisa lelusito kulesifo dudane.
Emalangeni lambaro lengcile litiko lethole i-ambulance esibhedlela se-RFM kanti konke lokhu kuyimitamo yekuthi etiko kusebenteke kuvaleke tikhala letikhona. Siveke sikhutsatwa ukuthi sitihlolele i-TB. Lobikako nguGiyani Msibi eCentral Medical Stores kuMathapha.
Indvuna yetinkhundla ithi ayitange seyike ithi emalunga ephalamende adla imali yekutfutfukisa tifundza i-Regional Development Fund. Lokhu kulandzela ukuthi kuvele kulelinye lemaphephandzaba ukuthi ishito lamagama lawa emhlanganweni wekufundzisa-ke sive ngemaphakelo ahulumende. Indvuna yethi ticelo tekutfola lesikhwama tigcina emalungeni ephalamende nawo lasayina nje kuphela. Kute-ke lendlela langayiba ngayo le mali futhi emalunga ephalamende bantfu labahloniphekile.
Ubekhona kumhlangano onke tifuna uzawuhambe kahle siyakudumisa lokho nasesiteki-ke libonjeni sigcine khona ngemsombulungu lapho sekuvela khona-ke inkulumo lengahambi kahle noma angithi inkulumo lelimatako lethi indvuna yetinkhundla yathi emalunga ephalamende ayalutha RDF yaphindze yathi emalunga ephalamende a-corrupt. Ngithanda kucondzisa-ke msakati lokuthi le nkulumo lena ide liciniso akuzange kusho kanjalo. Indvuna yetinkhundla emibutweni leyavela kulomhlangano yakusho lo ukuthi endzabeni RDF ngicale ngayo nje endzabeni RDF iphalamende ya resolve noma sinqumo sekuthi itfume litiko ukuthi lama regulations asasemva kakhulu asiwalungise atobuka tingoni letitsite. Silitiko esasukuma vele senta njengoba yisho iphalamende step sekucala lesasidecide kwaba ngilokuthi sikhanze kufanele ukuthi asicashe i-consultant letawuhlola vele ukuthi yini letinkinga kulesikhwama ngalokujulile singagcili nje la ekutheni seyithe iphalamende asilungise. Wendiwe lo msebenzi loyo umsakada sekubika lo wendiwe waba nemiphumela. Indvuna-ke yetinkhundla nayikhuluma lomhlangano wasesiteki yachaza lokuthi yaphuma i-report and kule report kukhona lokuthi ngakuthi vele sekusebente sekulungise kuma-regulations yabekisa ukuthi kufaka ekhathi ekutheni lesikhwama sakhelwa ukuthi sisite eMaswati lapho yile kucedza buphuya kodwa lamhla sekuyabonakala ukuthi sesizuza abantu labanenge labangekho kule category yebuphuya le ufaka ekhathi ukhanza abantu banamabhizinisi abo but sebadzinga lokuthi encema badzinga lo mshini lo noma yini sebenta ku-RDF ngalesinye isikhathi ukhanze ukuthi bahlanganisa abantu babalishumi babayincenye yabo-ke bafake lo 10% bese emva kwaloko sekusuka umsindo nasesiphasile isicelo seyikhona i-truck bese sokuthi umuntu yamle le mali angayifaka la 10%. Beyikhuluma ngaloko indvuna ithi kufuneka lama-regulations kubukisise lokho sekucinise lokho ukuthi akwenteki le mali ichubeka ifeze le purpose leyakhelwa yona. Ngaba kucolisa-ke sicolise kwemalungu ePhalamende lokuthi kuphume emagama labuhlungu kangaka la damaging ngalolu hlobo bese kuthiwa amalungu ePhalamende ya-corrupt ayalutha akuzange sekwenteke kusho lawo magama lawo lacondzile ukuthi bayalutha ba-corrupt. Umthatheli-ke le ndalo umsebenzi lebesinayo lesiteki lebhaleleni le-store si-engagile-ke silitiko sikhulumisene nayo futhi nayo sathola ukuthi ite lesiciniseko salokhu ekhuluma ngako ithi ngenteka kube khona lapho yevakabi khona but ke kuyajabulisa lokuthi seyiphindze futhi nalamhla ivele ibhalile lo ukuthi se-interview ku-MP ukuthi bathini ngalokhu lwasho indvuna kanti phela seyishidwa nakwelo ite lesiciniseko ukuthi vele kwahamba njani but ke kafishane nje sithanda kucondzisa sinike eMaswati siciniseko ukuthi emalungu ePhalamende bantu laba-honorable bakhethwa ngamaSwati ngoba abethembile futhi baseyibambe kahle basebenta kahle kakhulu.
Kunesidingo sokuthi live leSwatini liqinise kakhulu inhlelo nemithetho yokuvikela tinkampani kanye nesive ikakhulukati bantfwana ebucaleni lobenteka kutebuciko. Ngekusho kwaSakhile Dlamini losabambe kuba ngumcondzisi wetekuchumana etiko letekwatisa kuchumana kanye netebuciko. Lokhu-ke kungalisita live ukuthi litsenjwe ngamave emhlaba ukuthi lingilo-ke leliphephile kutebhizinisi kanye nekutenhlalakahle yesive. Dlamini bekakhuluma emhlanganweni wemalanga lamabili lapho khona litiko letekwatisa libambisene nelibandla lelibuke tekuchumana kuleli eSicom bacecesha-ke tinhlangothi letahlukene ngetekuphepha kutebuciko.
Kuna kulesithi ma-evolving cyber threats noma-ke letigilamkhuba letihlose kwekuthi tihlasele mhlawumbe bamvu emabhizinisi bohulumende nabasangena kuleti kuchumana manje-ke nabo baya ngekukhula mhlawumbe ngema-skills kwabona labo labatigilamkhuba so kumcoka ukuthi nathi njalo siti-update in terms of skills siticeceshe siti-upskille siti-reskille ukuze sitokhona ukuthi silungele the evolving cyber threat environment. Imitsetfo-ke vele sayishaya-ke silive lakangwane imitsetfo yekusiphephisa nje kutabancombomshina iphindze futhi i-criminalize mhlambe labo labatigilamkhuba kuleti tabancombomshina lekuthiwa i-Computer Crime and Cybercrime Act of 2022 sifuna kwenta i-Child Online Strategy ngoba kuphephisa abamfana la kutabancombomshina ukuthi kungathi kunganakwa noma ku-reflected kule mtsetfo kepha nje sekufuna kungathi kungaba strategy lesi-detailed lesikhomba ukuthi how are we committed and deliberate in protecting bantfwana betfu simaSwati njengoba sathi sibantfwana bangumlibalo embili sikwenta-ke lokho ngekubambisana nelitiko laka-Deputy Prime Minister's Office.
Libandla lelibuke emazinga i-Eswatini Standards Authority selicalile kuthatha imibono yesive nabosomabhizinisi mayelana neluhla lwemazinga lesakhiwe lafaka ekhatsi emazinga etikhwama letingayinyukubeti imvelo tinatfo letakhiwe lapha eveni nekwekucobisa tinwele kulokunye lokunyenti. Umphatsi waleli bandla Philip Mdawe uthi kunesidingo lesikhulu sekwekuthi eMaswati afake imibono kute live leSwatini lingasaleli ngaphandle etindzabeni temazinga. Mdawe ukuvete lokhu machaza ngekubaluleka kwemivo yesive.
Libandla lelibuke emazinga lihlanganise lamazinga lang-24 etinhlangothi letahlukene ngenhloso yekuthi imikhicito leyakhiwe lapha eveni ibe sezingeni lemhlaba lelitawenta kutsi lo mkhicito uthengiswe nangephandle kwelive. Philip Mdawe lobuke tinhlelo kulo lelibandla uthi kuze lamazinga atawuhambelana neMaswati kufanele ukuthi asukume afake imivo.
Inqubo yalama-standards lesiyiwadevelopha kwala bakwaSwasa siwa-adopter from the international community, from organizations lamakhulu like the International Organization for Standardization. Uyukhanze ukuthi lama-standards akhiwe lengesheya, akhelwa ema-conditions lanengesheya. Bekude live leliqhamuka kulama-third world countries lafana ne-Eswatini. Ayizobona ukuthi kuhle ukuthi uma si-adoptha lama-international standard bese sesivulela eMaswati ukuthi a-participate nawo abe khona nakufakako lapha kulama-standards.
Ngakulokunye Mdawe uvete nendzaba yemazinga emathayela labawakhile.
Sibonile lana ngaphandle ukuthi vele sekunemathayela langabithi ama-standard. Lithayela lokuthi nawo uma ugibele etokweni limonqoke. Singiswasa kunema-standards lesiwadevelophile. Standard nje lento sikhulumisa namuhla ninase-corrugated roofing sheets. Le standard lesi siyasho ukuthi emathayela likufanele ukuthi kurufwe ngawo amathayela la kanjani. Liyaspecifya i-thickness yalelo thayela, siphinde sispecify ukuthi uma kuyi-corrugated sheet ufuna ukuthi lama-corrugations abe mangakhi per sheet. I-distance between lama-corrugation konke lokho kudetermina le-strength salethayela. Konke kukhona lapha kule standard. Le standard asigcini lapho siphinde siqhubeke siyokhuluma ngema-test method ukuthi naleli thayela selakhiwe sekufanele ukuthi nyalo liyohlolwa. Funa litestwe according to the standard.
Sive singafaka lemivo ngemuva kwekufunza lamazinga lese ahlanganisiwe bese ke atfumela lemivo kungakashayi October 31, 2025. Kubika Sondomlangeni, Mathapha.
Bafundzi benyuvesi yaseLiyengo labahlabana-ke emqhudelwaneni waka-Enactus bathi sebalungele kuyawumelela live eThailand lapho kutawube kunemqhudelwano lomkhulu waka-Enactus. Baphathi betinkampane netinhlangano bakhutsatela abafundzi baphindze babasekela basaya khona kuyaqhudelana eThailand.
Labafundzi benyuvesi yaseLiyengo labahlabana emqhudelwaneni walonyaka welive ka-Enactus sebaya eThailand kuyoqhudelana lamanye emave endzabeni yemhlaba. Labafundzi ke batsatsa tinsiba tetinkhukhu batinonge batisebente ngatindlela letahlukeneke bakhe umcuba lekuyintfo lephasiswe nalitiko letekulima. Umcondzisi waka-Enactus Sabelo Dlamini uthi bameme baphatsi betinkampane netinhlangano ukuthi baqhushise bavunulise labafundzi basayekuya kuchudzelana khona eThailand.
Injongo lenkulu yalombuthano ukuthi babe nelitfuba lokuthi labantu abefile sihamba nabo betfule lo msebenzi labayawukwetfula evekini lelitako eBangkok. Lokumcoka kakhulu msakati ngoba lela siyakhona bafike vele beme embekwe baphathi betinkampane nebaholi labakhulu bemhlaba betfule lo msebenzi. So loku kubasita kubalungiselela lesimo labayawubhekana naso le. Lokuhle kakhulu ngokuthi namuhla akusinje ukuthi bayetfula kuphela kodwa ke labaphathi baletinkampane nalaba bayakhona babeluleke babavunulise ukuthi ulana kuboneni lokhu ku-improveni lokhu hayi lokhu ngeke kuvete kahle lo msebenzi. So kubachushisa nje nokubahlomisa basahamba bayomela live.
Lobekamelele isitalo welibandla labaqondzisi laka-Enactus phiwa inkosi Gininza uthi tinhlelo taka-Enactus nalo kwentiwa abafundzi inhloso ukuthi bavuleke ingqondo ngebhizinisi basafunza. Gininza uqhubeka uthi labanengi bafundzile kodwa ke kude imisebenzi ngakho ke INACTAS ufuna ukuthi babe nengcondo yokuthi khona lebangakwenta ngetandla tabo nekuhlanganisa imiqondo baphile. Labafundzi-ke batogcuzelana eBangkok, eThailand mhla ka-26 kuya ku-28 kuLesetulu. Lobikako ngiyani Msibi, eMountain View eMbabane.
Inyuvesi yakuleli i-UNESCO setfule ngekwemtsetfo sitifiketi lesiniketwa sive lesinayo i-degree yekucala sekuphatfwa kwemali yahulumende kanye-ke naletinye tinkampani letisebentisa imali yembuso i-postgraduate diploma in public sector accounting. Indvuna yetemafa umhlonishwa Neil Reichenberg itsi lesitifiketi sitawusita-ke kucinisekisa kusebenta ngalokusebaleni kanye nekutfutfukisa indlela hulumende lamikisa ngayo lusito esiveni.
Indvuna yelitiko letemafa yithi esikhatsini lesendlulile bekukhandzakala ukuthi labente tifundvo te-accounting tisuke tilungele ukuthi basebente tinkampanini letitimele hayi hulumende.
Government accounting is very different and different rules. In fact, we're IPSAS rules and not the normal IFRS rules. So for that reason, actually now there's a course that's been developed by the university that's now going to add an extra year to the degree.
Uthi indlela lasebenta ngayo hulumende yehlukile ngako lesitifiketi simqokwa kucinisekisa ukuthi labo labasebenta ngemali yahulumende baba nelwati lolungilo lokutawucinisekisa ukuthi imininingwane yekusebenta kwemali yahulumende ibangileyo lengiyo ngaso sonke isikhathi. Isekela lemphathi wenyuvesi Professor Justice Twala lithi sevele maningi emaswati lafake ticelo tekufundza.
Irrelevant not only for government ministries but also nalabo nje labasebentisa ema-accounts in the banking industry bangeta ba-enroll kule program. Cishe laba-enrollile bala ku-120 so far but baningi labafuyisile ku-enrolla.
Umcwaningi mabhuku wahulumende Nomsa Simelane uyachaza ukuthi lesitifiketi sitawusita kwekuthi labo labaselihlangothini lwe-accounting kahulumende basebenta ngelizinga lemhlaba.
Nyalo hulumende uthatha lenye indlela kusho ukuthi uthatha indlela le yeku-reporta kwabohulumende lekuthiwa ngema-International Public Sector Accounting Standards unema-reforms lamasha. Lokunye lakwendako i-Treasury Single Account letawufaka tonke timali tahulumende i-account yahulumende ivetwe nge-account inye yonke imali le yahulumende ivetwe nge-account inye itawufaka ekhathi ukuthi mawusebenzisa uhulumende lesibambe imali vele utiphatha njani futhi uhulumende ubuswa kanjani iphindze futhi ubuke ukuthi kuthengwa kanjani kahulumende ibuke futhi ukuthi emabhuku ahulumende ahlolwa kanjani.
Professor Justice Twala uthi nanoma sebavalile kufakwa kweticelo tekufundzela letifundvo kepha ngendlela sive lesikhombisa inshisekelo ngayo yekufundza lesitifiketi sebabuka ukuthi bachubele yembili lilanga lekugcina kufaka ticelo kukhulisa inombolo leku-120 kwanyalo lokungenani iye ku-150. Uchazile ukuthi lena ngulenye indlela inyuvesi leyetama ngayo kukhicita abafundzi labadzingwa yimisebenzi leyahlukene lapha eveni. Lobikako ngunelisiwe Ndlangamandla kunavuma inkosi Indzinisa kumathapha.
Tinhlangothi temabhange letahlukene lokufaka khatsi lawo lamakhulu letibuya esifundzeni saka-SADC tihlangene e-Central Bank ezulwini kubuka kutfutfukiswa kwendlela yokusebenta lokufaka ekhatsi ukuthi luhlelo lwekubhadalana lamanye emave real time gross settlements lungatfutfukiswa kanjani. Ngekusho kwelibhange lelikhulu loluhlelo enyangeni leliphelile nje kuphela lusebente ema-transactions langetulu kwa-150,000 emali lengetulu kwa-218 billion emalangeni.
Umphathi welibhange lelikhulu uthi uyaconza ukuthi luhlelo lwekubhadala lwemave yaka-SADC ngesikhathi lesiyimizuzwana belisebenzisa emarandi kepha-ke nyalo sekufanele kubukwe ukuthi lingawasebenzisa kanjani emadola kanye nemali yalamanye emave njengoba sakhona lakhombisa isifiso sekuthengiselana nalamanye emave asebenzisa imali yawo.
I'm aware that the SADC RTGS system settles payments in the South African rand. And there are also efforts being made to include additional currencies in the system, such as the US dollar. Some countries have taken the initiative to onboard their own currencies on the system.
Dokotela Mnisi ukhuthata labangenele lo mhlangano ukuthi bete netisombululo letikhonsa kodwa ukuthi lokhu kungendiwa kanjani njengoba ekutawudlala inzima lenkulu kuthuthukisa tekuthengiselana kanye nemnotfo kumava ka-SADC. Uthi kufanele kuqiniswe tekuvikela imali yesive kusasebenziswa tindlela tebuciko. Libhange lelikhulu lithe enyangeni lephelile nje kuphela lolu hlelo i-SADC real time gross settlement isebende ama-transactions emali lengu-218.56 billion emalangeni. Seyiyonke imali esetshenzwe ngaphansi kwalolu hlelo ibalelwa ku-17.56 trillion emalangeni. Libhange lelikhulu lithi lokhu kukhombisa bumqoka bekuthi kufanele lithuthukiswe lolu hlelo ngoba lidlala indima lebandi kutekuthengiselana. Lobikako nguNelson Dlangamandla kunavuma inkosi Nzinisa ezulwini.
Amaphoyisa abambe insangu lengabita 5 million emalangeni kulelinye likhaya enyonyane. Lisekela ke hlalokhulumela emaphoyisa noSipho Mnguni uthi bakhona labasetandleni temaphoyisa ngekuthinzeka kulobucala.
Emaphoyisa etinhlangothi tonke shothi nje asetigotini tonke aphuma aya operation lawo la elitiko laka drug laka anti drug bathi ke basenda umsebenzi wabo ke vele base sebafika kulelinye likhaya endaweni yakaHoho enyonyane lapho khona kugcine kutholakala insangu lenengi kakhulu le kuthi tona seyibaliwe nje seyithethwe yonke wakhanzela kathi inesisindo lesingu 2169 kgs lapho kukhanzwe khona seyigcitshwe emasakeni labo lang 277 leyinye ke yakhona beseseyomisiwe nje ke usabona ukuthi umsebenzi impela bowusachubeka uthi teke nase siyiqalile lensango sabona ukuthi kube beyingathathwa ibalwe ngemali beyingaba worth 5,424,000 i-street value sayo shothi nesango kuba bona ke kusebenza kwemaphoyisa ukuthi endaweni yakahlathi kusakanamuhla kwaba khona umbiko lesokuthola kwemaphoyisa ukuthi kunebantu lababonakala ungathi baduba lona lithusi ikhopha emaphoyisa ke abese ayaphuma khona lapho ebusuku lapho ukuthi nje kungakashayi insimbi yesithathu kwaba khona indoda lena 32 yasendaweni yaseModi lebese iyabanjwa ke izama ukujuba lona lelithusi beyingasiko yodwa ke beyina lamanye amadoda lamabili lenye yayo lokuyindoda leneminyaka le41 yasesihluthe lena ke lenye yesithathu angesisengakayazi ukuthi ingabe ingibani ngoba yona igcine iphunyukile kodwa lawa lamabili amadoda agcine vele ahlalela khona etandleni temaphoyisa lapho khona lona eminyaka le32 ubese soyathinza-thinzeka ukuthi sive sithe nasimbamba vele sase siyamthinza-thinza sithithe nje sifika thina amaphoyisa sakhanza ukuthi sebamlimalime sikhuluma nje usesibhedlela lapho eselashwa khona lona-ke lo mnye wasesihluthe yena ugcine sekaboshwa nenthatha kusa ekuseni nje nakusa ngithi ithuba dabo 5 ekuseni asatholakala sekangileyogibela ibhasi asabaleka khona lenzaweni nalapha-ke sibonga kakhulu ukuthi impela kubonakele ukuthi sive impela solo siyawayithemba emaphoyisa kungako nje ukuthi nakucala lo mshikashika bavele babitawe nemaphoyisa lokhu nje kwenteke ngoba sibe sisebenzisana nayo i-community yakhona le enyanyana.
Kutemidlalo umceceshi welikhethelo lesive sihlangu semnikati iStrafco Lugarosic sewukhululiwe ke ececesheni lelikhethelo lesive lokho kulandzela kuvumelana emkhatsini wakhe Lugarosic kanye nenhlangano lengamele ibhola kuleli Eswatini Football Association bathi ke akasakhoni kunika live imiphumela lemihle kulelikhethelo ngekusho kwalabo labati kangcono lenzaba umceceshi Lugarosic bekangakhoni kusita lelicembu ukuthi litfole imiphumela lemihle uhamba nje kulandzela kucala kwakhe ekucecesha lelikhethelo kusukela ngenyanga yeNgci eminyakeni lophelile Lugarosic ke uneminyaka lengema-60 budzala udlalise live emidlalweni yema-World Cup qualifiers eminyaka lotako indzebe yeCOSAFA yeminyaka lophelile kanye nendzebe ye-Africa Cup of Nations umsakato wetitfombe Eswatini TV usalandzela ke ukuthi ngubani lotawubamba sikhundla sekucecesha likhethelo lesive kusayiwa emidlalweni yema-World Cup qualifiers nelive le-Angola kanye ne-Cape Verde enyangeni letako ngakulokunye sihlalo wenhlangano ye-Premier League of Eswatini Polycarp Dlamini uthi ngekusho kwemaphepha laphetfwe ngiyo i-Premier League of Eswatini licembu leMbabane Swallows labhaliswa ngeminyaka wa-2012 njengeMbabane Swallows Association FC Dlamini ke abekhuluma ngesikhathi i-Premier League ihlangene nelibandla lelichamuka kuMbabane Swallows Pty Ltd lebelivakashele lenhlangano ukuthi litfole timphendvulo mayelana nemsindvo lokhona kuleli cembu emkhatsini kwayo iMbabane Swallows FC kanye neMbabane Swallows FC Pty Ltd. ngakulokunye iqembu le-Royal Leopard selisukile kuleli lalibhekisa edolobheni le-Francistown eveni laseBotswana lakhona liyawudlala umlende wekucala wendebe ye-CAF Confederations Cup neliqembu le-Young Africans leliqhamuka eveni laseNamibia. Lokhulumela leli qembu Frank Hurube uvetile ukuthi basalibhekisa khona eFrancistown umsebenzi wabo munye vo kuthi-ke baphakamise umjeka welive kulo mdlalo. Lo mdlalo utawudlalwa ngemgcibelo enkhundleni ye-Obed Itani Chume khona eFrancistown. Tingakwenza bathe Eswati sichumana nasomnotho wasanele sibiya uMaspet Makethe ngana indzaba siyibonile endzabeni leqhubeka eCentral Bank ye-RTGS.
Eswatini TV has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Eswatini Communications Commission. We are committed to reporting news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that does not amount to hate speech or the description of gratuitous violence or explicit sex. For any complaints of our programming, please contact us on 2411-9600 or email info@eswatinitv.co.za. You can also contact the Eswatini Communications Commission on 2406-7000 or write a letter to ECCOM on PO Box 7811 Mbabane. Email address is info@ecom.org.sz.
Welcome back. 37 minutes into our program now. Stanley Lesbia joins us virtually. We want to understand this 17.5 trillion malangeni. Well, that is the share value of transactions that have already been processed through the SADC real-time gross settlement system, which, of course, on paper, it's a payment platform, but in practice, it's the financial bloodstream of an entire region. We want to understand what it all means for growth, for intra-SADC trade, as well as for the long debated question of whether we can one day trade in our own currencies without leaning on the South African rand, which is currently the only onboarded currency within the system. So to help us break it down now within the economics behind the system, we are joined by an economist. Stanley Lesbia is here to unpack how the RTGS is shaping trade, liquidity, as well as the stability of our economies. Good morning, Sanele. Thank you so much for your time this morning. Perhaps let's start with the number that has grabbed everyone's attention. 17.56 trillion in transactions. That's a lot. From an economist's perspective, what does that figure really tell us about trade flows as well as regional integration?
Hello, good morning, Mr. Ngumalo, and good morning to the viewer. So when we are looking at that figure, Mr. Ngumalo, I think for me what it speaks to really is the volume of intra-regional trade, both in goods and services within the SADC region, which is quite commendable, and we do expect this figure to continue growing as SADC deepens integration within the region, and as you know, the region continues to be integrated broader into Africa overall, and you know, just those pushes towards those COMESA countries, and you know, just ensuring that we are trading intra-block within Africa. If anything to go by, we've seen that you know, when international shocks come into play, we tend to be affected more as Africa, yet we are not trading much within ourselves. So there is that scope for that growth, and that number is quite testament to that, Mr. Ngumalo.
And then, of course, we are seeing that the RTGS reduces reliance on intermediary banks and it helps cut transaction costs. How transformative is this for SMEs? But not only SMEs, exporters as well that are across SADC who often cite cost and speed as barriers to trade.
Thank you. I think what the system does is quite commendable, and it is actually what we need as Africa, because one of those costs are usually those transaction costs where it actually just becomes very difficult and quite expensive to transfer money from one country to another, having to ensure that there is that intermediary bank or that intermediary player who comes into the field and ensures that they're able to settle those transactions. And then what we're then looking into is that was forming a non-trade barrier, but it was forming a trade barrier, but what we call a non-tariff trade barrier. When you look at the other things that make it difficult to trade within regions, and this system unlocks that speed and affordability and makes it relatively easier for Africa to trade with each other, for SADC to trade with each other. So we should expect this to continue improving volumes as the overall cost of sales are going to be coming down for our MSMEs and our regional exporters.
Yeah, and at present, the system settles mainly in South African rand, and citing what Dr. Phil says in the excerpt that we played in our news, he did, of course, acknowledge that, and that he said, verbatim, there are efforts to onboard more currencies. Do you see the multi-currency push possibly onboarding the US dollar and regional currencies as an economic game changer, or could it complicate stability in the region?
We could look at onboarding other currencies, but that requires quite a broad thinking. Let's start probably with domestic or regional currencies. What we're seeing happening in the region right now is there's a bit of fragility that we are seeing within our macroeconomics and within the monetary system. So exchange rate stability has to be one of those things that you can somehow predict, and that is why I think right now the rand is the one currency that we are using on there. But yeah, you could also think of right now when you look at the Botswana pula, it's doing relatively well and could be onboarded as one of those currencies because they do have that kind of macro monetary policy framework and that fiscal framework that's a bit strong at present. But what you need to be cognizant of is the fact that you need a currency that's going to be a bit strong and a bit, a bit predictable. With inflation being held at par, and I mean right now it makes sense for one to use the South African rand because, as it were, it is currently used in 5 SADC countries, and then also it's used in Zimbabwe. So around 6 countries are now currently using it. So it's becoming the regional vehicle currency. Onboarding the dollar again requires would actually enhance a bit of that flexibility, but you require to have a bit of flexibility regarding the liquidity and your forex, your foreign exchange holdings as a region. So it could be quite a bit complicated. So the rand is quite. We're doing quite okay right now at present, because it doesn't really now board into our forex policies and quite a number of those issues to consider.
So if we bring it home, and I think I know the answer to this, but let me ask you, perhaps a viewer can benefit from it. If Eswatini was to one day settle trade in our own currency, that is the Lilangeni, what kind of macroeconomic adjustments would be required, and would such a shift be practical given current levels of integration?
I think by virtue of settling in rands, Mr. Ngumalo, we are practically settling in Emalangeni because the Langeni is pegged 1-to-1 with the South African rand. So would need to have, stronger monetary policy, credibility, deeper forex markets, and we'd also need to look into those CMA arrangements before we can start offering those currencies and settling in our own terms, in our own Lilangeni. But the fact that we're settling in rands in the region means we are practically settling in Lilangeni because we are not facing any of those foreign exchange rate movements and dimensions in settling our currencies. But overall, what SADC would require, Mr. Ngumalo, if we were to settle in local currencies, including the Lilangeni, is macroeconomic convergence, which is one of the things that we've been looking into in a very long period of time within the region.
Yeah, and there's a proposal to extend RTGS operating hours and add Saturdays. Would such flexibility make a meaningful difference to economic activity, or is it more of a symbolic step in responding to market demands?
It would actually, for me, it's one of those things that need to be done because, if you think of it, Saturday is a working holiday, it's not a bank, is a bank day, actually. So if you're able to now extend, this the payment system into that day, what you are doing basically is, you're allowing businesses to settle late week transactions. That's number one. Secondly, you reduce the rollover risk because, imagine settling a transaction on Friday and then it then gets transferred to the Monday cycle, and when you then release the money on the Monday cycle, the exchange rate may have actually changed. So that's one of the risks that we have to deal with. Those rollover risks that you have to deal with as a business. So now, if you could allow Saturdays to become part of those days with which you can use to settle those transactions, you are reducing that risk and making trade flows to be relatively easy, right? And also you reduce the issue of those differential global time zones. So you then allow a person probably to set a payment in the US on a Friday night, and you would still be able to have that payment settled here on Saturday as a working day. Yet, if the person settles the payment on Friday night in the US, then that means that money is only going to come through the following week around Tuesday.
Dr. Phil raised, or rather mentioned, concerns around cyber risk. How do you assess the economic threat of a potential disruption in a regional system like this? And perhaps how critical is risk management to investor confidence?
Risk management is quite critical, Ngumalo. And more especially because we are living in an age of cyber technology. That's number one. Secondly, we are talking about transferring money here. We need that system to be very much secured. We're talking trillions of emalangeni that have to be transferred through this system. So you have to make sure that it is quite secure, such that investors can actually trust, the people who use the system, Eswatini, all the people in the region can actually trust that if I send my money through this platform, it is going to get where I intend for it to go. And we know that there are quite a number of cyber security risks that we're facing right now. As we're moving towards real-time payment settlement, and that means we're relying more and more on technology, IT infrastructure. But at the same time, as we are doing that, we're seeing that you're also seeing criminals also coming into the play and relying more and more on that very same infrastructure on how to actually scam people, and we've seen people, faking pages, making a page look like similar to that one of your bank, and then you log in there, you make a transfer, the money is lost. So you cannot be pushing this vigorous financial and deepening strategy without considering risk, which includes, amongst others, cybersecurity risks, and also the other things that you need to look into. I've already spoken a bit about this. Is your monetary policy stability, which also now forms a risk. Your exchange rate stability again, which forms another one of those risks.
Certainly, hackers are innovating just as fast as everyone else is innovating. So, yeah, we got to keep abreast. But I want to understand if we zoom out, perhaps before I even get there, let's talk to the ordinary trader now. For someone that's trading on the sides of the roads, for a small SME owner in the Kingdom of Eswatini, what does RTGS mean in their lives? Why should they care about a system that they've never heard of?
So what you have to understand, Ngumalo, is when we talk of real-time payments, real-time settlement of payments, it's a regional trade agreement, a regional trade arrangement that allows for quite a number of payments to occur within the region. Right. And as you know, that Eswatini is a trading community. We are a largely open country. So most likely, whatever it is that you're trading on the side of the road, Mr. Ngumalo, comes through, foreign trade. And it is this payment system that makes those transactions quite possible. And also, when you look at what is happening domestically, Mr. Ngumalo, we are looking at modernizing the country's real time gross payment infrastructure. And if you look at what has been happening domestically, you're now able to transfer your money from FNB to Standard Bank instantly. And that domestic infrastructure has to be linked and has to be capable to interoperate with this regional real-time cross settlement system. So you cannot look at the RTGS as one of those things that are not pertinent to your life. It is these very same systems, these very same structures, and the infrastructure that is required to participate in this system that has made it possible for you to be able to transfer money from one bank to the other instantly, and therefore increasing even that value of our domestic transactions within Eswatini. So it may look like it's a SADC thing, but what we've seen happening as well, our local payment switch is actually very much integrated to this RTGS, and we are a trading economy.
Let's take that SADC thing lens and understand whether it gives us any competitive edge amongst firms from outside of the SADC region, or the question could also be, or are we still perhaps too far from matching the ease of payments from other regions like the EU as well as Asia, for instance?
No, that one, what you look into when you look into the system, Ngumalo, is I think it works quite well, because what you then have to utilize, you have to have the regional SADC system linked to the international switcher system, which for me, I think it does that relatively well, considering that, if transactions are being released from the US into Eswatini, for example, you would find that it's a day or two the money would have been in through that system. So we are somehow integrating to the entire globe as SADC, and the fact that we have this regional payment system now somehow gives us competitive advantage, because imagine if each country were to come up with its own payment system, its own payment switch, and working towards integrating it to that international switch system. That would have been quite a mammoth of a task for quite a number of the smaller countries, and there would have been a bottleneck to trade. But right now, if you look at all the countries in the region, we are all largely integrated to the international system, and in most cases you don't even need an intermediary bank, Mr. Nxumalo. So now that speaks to the level of integration into the international payment system through the regional real-time gross payments settlement.
Yeah, let's look at the political economy angle, because let's be honest, whenever money moves across borders, of course politics then come into play. And we then want to understand how much political will, as well as the cooperation, will be required to keep the RTGS successful, especially when member states have competing interests, as they do.
I think the one thing that we agree on, Mr. Nxumalo, as SADC countries is, as it were, the RTGS is the only system we have and the only feasible and the only cheap system that we can use to be integrated to the international payment system and to actually improve on trade amongst ourselves. So that's the one thing I think at the very common thread we agree upon.
Yeah.
But what we don't agree upon is those other dimensions in terms of, overall monetary policy cohesion, in terms of overall fiscal policy cohesion, and in terms of overall developmental cohesion, including, regional blocking in terms of the cohesion around the different regional blocks that we want to be in and the different blocks that we see in the region. But I think this is the one thing that SADC countries agree upon, and I think it does remain one of those sustainable things that we're seeing, that we see to come out of the region. And what you're looking into is somehow it creates this very subtle, nuanced, blueprint for what the region would use if we were now to move deeper into integration. Because if you look into the SADC agreements, Mr. Nxumalo, there is one that speaks to integrating deeper, deepening integration in the SADC region, where we move towards a customs union and then eventually a monetary union. Now, those are the agreements that are quite being held by those politics. But this one is one of those things that we seem to all agree on at present.
So perhaps in that very sentiment, if we zoom out now, do you see the SADC RTGS as a stepping stone towards something bigger, perhaps a regional monetary union, or at least what we call, a single payments ecosystem that's going to reduce our dependency on external systems?
Thank you, Nxumalo. So when you look into that, what I've it just basically dovetails into what I've been trying to explain.
Yeah.
We have those aspirations within SADC. But what we faced with at present, Mr. Nxumalo, is number one, those competing priorities that you talked about. We have SACU, SADC, COMESA, and ECOWAS and the EAC, the East African Union, the East African Community in the East, and you have the West African ECOWAS, the Economic Society of West African Countries, and then you have your Common Market, which is COMESA. All those countries, all those blocks, Mr. Nxumalo, seem to have the same aspirations, but when you look within those different blocks, you will find that countries fall here and there. So now that's where the problem starts. We need to somehow cross that line. If we can cross that line where we decide to say, no, this is the regional bloc that we are all forming and we are becoming part of that, then evidently the RTGS payment system would be very much catalytic on the monetary and the flexibility and ensuring the velocity and transfer of money within that very same union becomes quite critical. And SADC stands poised to benefit from that in the sense that you already have quite a number of these infrastructures, this infrastructure in place that you need if you're to deepen your integration within the region. It's an issue of deciding and getting beyond those, those competing political objectives to push a single economic and political objective within the region.
Stanley, thank you very much indeed for your time. Appreciate your insights on this conversation, the real-time gross settlement system underway with the Central Bank of Eswatini hosting member states discussing ways to improve trade, integration and efficiency as the crux of the system itself. That was Sanele Sbia, our economist, who's always available to help us understand the economy and the systems that are developed to enhance and catalyze the transformation of our economy in Eswatini, in Africa, as well as the world in large. Let's go for a net break. We have our English news. Masbuya.
Eswatini TV has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Eswatini Communications Commission. We are committed to reporting news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that does not amount to hate speech or the description of gratuitous violence or explicit sex. For any complaints of our programming, please contact us on 2411-9600 or email info@eswatinitv.co.za. You can also contact the Eswatini Communications Commission on 2406-7000 or write a letter to ECCOM on PO Box 7811 Mbabane. Email address is info@ecom.org.za.
You're still watching Kusile Breakfast Show this Thursday morning. Thank you for staying with us. Our English news now. The Honorable Prime Minister of the Kingdom of Eswatini, Raselimiso Dlamini, has launched the regional hub that is aimed to ensure that no country in the region stands alone in the face of national disasters. The Drought Center of Excellence and the SADC Platform for Disaster Risk Reduction Management and the Eswatini Drought Center of Excellence were officially launched at the Happy Valley Hotel in Eswatini.
When addressing the meeting, the Prime Minister Raset Dlamini highlighted that the Ngwe Program of Action, especially Objective Number 4, is centered around food sovereignty. However, silent disasters like drought are a threat towards achieving that noble goal.
Our efforts do not stand on their own. We are guided by global frameworks such as the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction, which calls on us to understand risk, strengthen risk governance, invest in resilience, and build back better. We are also inspired by the 2015 Paris Agreement, which urges action to limit global warming while supporting communities to adapt to climate change.
SADC's Deputy Secretary General applauded Eswatini for the journey she has traveled in disaster risk reduction.
Allow me to congratulate the Kingdom of Eswatini for the exemplary leadership in advancing the disaster risk reduction agenda, including being elected the chair of the SADC Humanitarian and Emergency Operations Center.
The World Bank has also pledged to continue supporting the kingdom.
Eswatini's story is one of transformation. When the devastating El Nino drought of 2015 and 16 struck, it impacted ripples across every facet of life, disseminating agricultural production, exhausting traditional savings, driving communities into poverty and migration. The government faced losses amounting to 19% of its annual expenditure, a staggering 7% of the GDP. Yet, in the wake of this crisis, Eswatini's leaders resolved to chart a new course, one of the defined by resilience.
The meeting is expected to come to a close on Friday. Reporting, I'm Lincoln Kule, Eswatini.
Myself, right? The Prime Minister, Honorable Kusile has conveyed condolences to the King of the Ashanti people, His Majesty Otomfuo Seitu II, on behalf of their Majesties and Eswatini at the Maia Palace. This follows the passing of the Ashanti Queen Mother Asante Ma Nana Konadu Yidom III. The DPM has travelled to the palace with a delegation, which includes the Honorable Minister of Tinkundla Sikumbuzo Dlamini, Prince Phuhlapi, and Chief Mzabankhulu Simelane.
The Deputy Prime Minister, Honorable Kusile and her delegation gathered with hundreds of Ashanti people on the third day of the burial rites of Asante Hema Nana Konadu Yadom III at the Manhia Palace on Wednesday. The DPM, who is here to represent His Majesty King Mswati III, first signed the condolence book at the palace. She proceeded to join the Ashanti nation and their king, Asante Hene Otomfu Osiye Tutu II, at the arena. The DPM and a delegation then went to pass their condolences to the King of the Ashanti and convey a message from the Kingdom of Eswatini. She was followed by Prince Phuhlapi, who also had an opportunity to greet the king and pass his condolences. In the Ashanti culture, it is not said that the queen will be buried, but rather she will go to the village. This will mark the fourth day and an end of her burial rites. Reporting is Temigosi Mavimbela, Kumasi, Ghana.
8 people were found with tuberculosis during the TB screening in this year's trade fair. The TB control program received motorbikes and trucks that are going to be used by the TB unit for screening purposes.
The 4 trucks and the 12 motorbikes are to the value of 21 million emalangeni and will be used in the TB control program. The trucks have the latest artificial intelligence technology where a patient can check for TB and get the results same time. The trucks also are built with patient areas within themselves where a patient who needs special attention and need to be taken to hospital can be transported using the truck with no need for another vehicle. The Minister of Health, Honorable Mduduzi Matsabula, says they are trying by all means to close gaps and normalize the situation within the ministry.
Aphindze futhi akhone ukuthi noma ngabe kude gesi kulendzawo ayakhona ngoba aphindze abe solar panels la ngetulu ayakhona ukuthi aphindze asebente ngaphandle kwagesi.
The minister says they have tested one of the trucks where in the recent trade fair, about 229 people were tested for TB, where 8 people were identified. He says the trucks will be deployed regionally with the primary focus on TB screening. The trucks are also equipped with chest x-rays for effective delivery. A couple of days ago, the ministry handed over an ambulance to the RFM hospital, which are efforts to make better the situation. Reporting, I'm Kiani Msibi at the Central Medical Stores in Matsapa.
The Eswatini Standards Authority is inviting public and business views on newly developed standards. These standards include eco bags, hair growth oils, ice cream, roasted coffee beans standards, among others. SWASA's technical manager, Philip Mdawe, says the standards will help Eswatini products gain global recognition and compete internationally.
The Eswatini Standards Authority has developed over 20 standards for products such as ice cream, roasted coffee, hair oil, eco-friendly bags, cake mix powder, and other items. The authority is now inviting public comments as these standards are currently in draft form. Philip Mdawe, SWASA's technical manager, says that the public input is important as a feedback will be considered before submitting the standards to the international body.
Ayizobona ukuthi kuhle ukuthi uma si-adoptha lama-international standard bese sesivulela emaswati ukuthi aparticipate
Ndawe explained that public views will ensure the standards reflect Eswatini's context and that the certification will provide a mark demonstrating that the product can compete effectively.
Sibonile lala ngaphandle ukuthi vele sekunamathayela la ngakithi standard. Lithayela lokuthi nawo uma ugibele etokweni limonqoke.
On another note, Mdawe encouraged Amaswati to use corrugated iron that meets the developed standards to prevent hailstorm damage, as the approved products have specific protective layers. The public is invited to submit their views by 31 October 2025. Reporting, Sondomlangeni Matapa.
The University of Eswatini Luyengo campus, who are Enactus champions, say they are ready to compete in the Enactus global competition. The students had a session with the captains of industry to inspire them ahead of the finals.
Enactus Luyengo campus, who are this year's national champions, are set to compete in the Enactus World Cup at Bangkok, Thailand. Enactus invited captains of industry, CEOs, MDs, and stakeholders to motivate, inspire, and support the students ahead of their competition. Enactus Country Director Sabelo Dlamini says this session will morally boost the students' self-esteem.
The purpose of the session today is to give an exposure to our champions who will be going to Bangkok, Thailand next week to represent the Kingdom of Eswatini in the Enactus World Cup. At Bangkok, they will be presenting their project in a panel of over 50 executives from all around the world. So this session is made to expose them to a similar environment that they will be meeting in Bangkok. And over and above that, they will get an opportunity to be mentored and advised by our business community and the development partners in the country.
The Enactus board chairperson was represented by Piwa Ngosi, who says they always ensure that students are entrepreneurs and think business whilst at the university because employment opportunities are slim these days.
But a call to action from all of us here this morning. We are, therefore, as business leaders,
the winning team make fertilizer out of chicken feathers, something that have been approved by the Ministry of Agriculture to be good food for plants. Reporting, I am Kian MCB at the Mountain View in Babane.
The University of Eswatini has launched the postgraduate diploma in public sector accounting that is designed to empower professionals with advanced expertise, innovative research capacity and ethical leadership. Speaking during the launch at Kusile, the Minister for Finance, Neil Reichenberg, said the course will contribute to enhanced financial literacy, transparency, accountability, as well as service delivery in the public sector.
At the moment, we have a lot of students coming out with qualifications of accounting, which are really great, but the accounting is really aligned for private sector accounting, and government accounting is very different and different rules. In fact, we're IPSAS rules and not the normal IFRS rules. So for that reason, actually now there's a course that's been developed by the university that's now going to add an extra year to the degree, meaning that you're now especially trained and especially equipped to be able to handle government. And it's a little bit broad, from procurement to auditing to just normal accounting.
The Vice-Chancellor says there has been an overwhelming number of applicants from professionals, highlighting strong interest in the university's program.
This is a new initiative which has attracted quite a lot of potential students. We're talking about 120 that have already registered. It's going to be addressing issues of finance in the public sector, issues of resource mobilization for public entities and also for projects that government may be involved in. So we find it to be very relevant.
Accountant General Nomsa Simelane unpacks some of the program offerings, shedding light on how they aim to build capacity in key sectors.
The public sector is adopting new accounting standards, the International Public Sector Accounting Standards. This course will incorporate the International Public Sector Accounting Standards and public sector procurement, public sector auditing, also governance and ethics in the public sector.
The University of Eswatini is actively developing new programs designed to meet evolving industry needs and align with national development goals. Reporting, Nelson Dlangamandla from Nkosi Nzinisa, Matapa.
Over 152,000 transactions worth more than 218 billion emalangeni were processed last month through the SADC real-time gross settlement system, the RTGS, highlighting its importance to the region's financial sector. The Central Bank Governor, Dr. Philip Nisi, said the system enables near real-time settlement of high-value cross-border transactions between financial institutions in the SADC region. He was speaking at the SADC Real-Time Gross Settlement Forum, where central banks, authorized banks and non-banks from SADC member states are all discussing ways to upgrade the system and boost regional trade.
The governor of the central bank explains the SADC real-time gross settlement system and its significance.
I'm aware that the SADC RTGS system settles payments in the South African rand. And there are also efforts being made to include additional currencies in the system, such as the US dollar. Some countries have taken the initiative to onboard their own currencies on the system. In this regard, the SADC RTGS system is a multi-currency system, and I have noted in the agenda that multi-currency settlement is one of the topics for discussion.
The Central Bank of Eswatini reports that the SADC RTGS system processed 152,660 transactions valued at 218.56 billion emalangeni in just last month. The report by the Central Bank further states that the total number of transactions settled to date stands at 5,478,841 emalangeni, representing a cumulative value of 17.56 trillion emalangeni. Reporting, Nelson Dlangamandla, Nkosi Nzinisa, Ezulwini.
We take a look at international news now. Israeli forces pressed on with a new ground offensive in Gaza City on Wednesday as strikes overnight across the Palestinian territory killed at least 16 people. That includes women and children. Hospitals and hospital officials gave this reaction.
Gaza City razed to the ground by Israel. The expansion of Israel's military offensive in the area causing panic among residents who've been displaced numerous times during the course of the war and now have nowhere to flee.
The situation is very difficult for us and we have no money at all. My father's in poor health and needs help to push the handcart. There's no safe place in Gaza, and we'll have to sleep on the street like others tonight.
Up until now, Israel urged residents to evacuate via a coastal road, but now the Israeli army claims it's established a temporary transportation route, which will remain open for 48 hours ending at noon on Friday. The so-called safe corridor cuts across the Gaza Strip. But residents who have no choice but to take it aren't sure if they will be safe, as in the past these too have come under attack by Israel.
There is no safe place anywhere in Gaza. We don't know where our fate will lead to, and I can't be sure the place I'm heading to is really safe. As long as Israel wants it, their so-called safe zones will become targets of attacks. Who can guarantee that Israel won't attack us?
Across Gaza, Israel's expanded military operation is felt and seen everywhere, with plumes of smoke which continue to billow in the distance while jets and helicopters hover in the air. Israel's army announced it struck over 150 targets in Gaza City since Tuesday. The latest escalation comes as Israel faces renewed international pressure and fresh accusations of carrying out a genocide in Gaza.
Tyler Robinson fired a single fatal shot from the rooftop of a building overlooking the outdoor venue where Kirk was speaking to about 3,000 people on September 10. This is said by investigators. Afterward, prosecutors say he texted with the partner who he lived with near St. George, Utah, about 240 miles southwest of the campus.
Your name?
Tyler James Robinson.
The 22-year-old appeared via video link, wearing a green vest to prevent self-harm. Robinson faces 7 charges, including aggravated murder and witness tampering, but he didn't enter a plea.
Mr. Robinson, for count 1, aggravated murder, a capital felony in violation of Utah Code annotated 76-5-202, in that on September 10th, 2025 in Utah County, the defendant, Tyler James Robinson, intentionally or knowingly caused the death of Charlie Kirk.
Prosecutors are seeking the death penalty.
Just for the court's information, we did file just recently, within the last few minutes, a notice of intent to seek the death penalty that was filed by Utah County Attorney Jeff Gray.
Kirk was shot last Wednesday while speaking at a university in Utah. Authorities say he was targeted for his political views. Robinson was arrested just 33 hours later after police tracked him using surveillance footage. Kirk was a prominent conservative voice, known for campus speeches and millions of social media followers. Robinson's legal battle is only just beginning. His next court hearing is set for the 29th of September, as investigators continue piecing together the events that led to Kirk's death.
U.S. President Donald Trump was welcomed by King Charles III to Windsor Castle on Wednesday with a royal spectacle featuring gun salutes, mounted horses and bagpipes as the U.S. President's historic second state visit got into full swing.
U.S. President's alley. There's the gold, the pomp, the pageantry, the carriages and banquets, the exclusivity of it all. Donald Trump has long been a very vocal fan of the British royal family, calling King Charles on multiple occasions a friend, just as he did upon landing on British soil.
Friend of mine for a long time, and everybody respects him, and they love him.
All state visits are about soft power diplomacy. But the cherry on the cake for Trump is that this state visit is his second. That's unprecedented. Buckingham Palace, which issues the invitation upon advisement with the government, confirmed that no other elected leader in modern times has been invited for a second state visit, which has extra trappings. For some Americans in the UK, it's win-win.
He's a big fan of the Royals. He's a big fan of this country. He's very fond of the UK. So if there's any place in the world that he would want to do a state visit, it's here in the United Kingdom.
Trump's fascination for the royal family dates back far beyond his first state visit in June 2019, hosted by the late Queen Elizabeth II. In his books, Trump credits his showmanship to his late Scottish mother, who he said admired the royals, and he expressed regret that his attempts to date a recently divorced Princess Diana failed. There have been other missteps, too. Rumors swirled in the 1980s that Prince Charles was buying an apartment in Trump Tower, a false report allegedly planted by Trump himself. Trump's invitation to Charles to join his Mar-a-Lago club was also refused. On social media, Trump wrote Wales wrong as well, adding an H. He also praised stolen topless photos of Kate Middleton and has repeatedly bashed Meghan Markle, calling her terrible. But this second state visit is indeed a means of cementing the UK and the US's special relationship. That is, if protesters don't tarnish the bling. For there is also the Jeffrey Epstein connection, or Trump, Prince Andrew, and now sacked UK ambassador Peter Mandelson's friendships with the sex offender.
Let's go to France now, where leaders of the Socialist Party met with the new Prime Minister Sébastien Lecornu on Wednesday, seeking to get big concessions on the budget in talks that could shape the final stretch of President Emmanuel Macron's second term. Let's listen.
With many French citizens fuming about plans for severe budget cuts to rein in the nation's debt, September 18th is expected to be what's called in French a jeudi noir, or a Black Thursday, with strikes disrupting multiple sectors across the country. Be it in the transportation, education, energy, or health sectors, many French citizens have already given their notice. They'll be coming out in force at hundreds of planned protests. In primary schools, 1/3 to 45% of teachers are expected to strike. For parents, that means having to find a plan B.
Remote work, there is no choice but work from home and watch the kids.
We made arrangements. We're lucky to have the grandparents in the Paris region, so she'll be welcomed with open arms by Grandma.
As for transportation, it's the Paris region that may be hit hardest. Some 80% of the capital's metros could be disrupted. Except for the automated lines, no trains are expected to run except for during rush hour. Scores of drivers have already said they'll be striking.
91.3% have said they're striking. That's a huge score, and it's true we got people mobilized in record time. It's proof of the disgruntlement of our colleagues and the French people in general.
Outside Paris, only 1 in 3 TER or regional trains and 1 in 2 intercity ones are forecast, while most of the high-speed TGV trains are expected to run. Airports may see some disruptions, but the main air traffic control union said they'll strike at another time. With anger running high over Emmanuel Macron's choosing a close ally, Sébastien Lecornu, as his new prime minister, and over the still on-the-table budget cuts, over half a dozen labor unions have said they'll be marching together, a first since 2023 in the pension reform strikes.
Over in Peru, there's been an evacuation of around 1,600 tourists from a train station that serves the Inca citadel of Machu Picchu after a local protest escalated into clashes with police. A UNESCO World Heritage Site since 1983, the ancient fortified complex receives around 4,500 visitors a day, many of them foreigners, according to the tourism ministry.
A dream trip to Peru's #1 tourist attraction that had turned sour ended on Tuesday after tourists had been stuck overnight near Machu Picchu due to a railway line blocked by protesters. Some 900 were stranded at the nearest railway station. They were told their only option was to walk several kilometres and arrange their own transport from there, leaving many frustrated.
I don't even know if agreeing to that walk would guarantee transport afterwards. And in my case, I can't do it because my wife is pregnant. So for me personally, it's not feasible.
Still, there was sympathy from some for the protesters.
For us, the situation is horrible, but I think it's the right and it's important to do this strike here. And it's always so that the companies get a lot of money from the tourists, and the people who are working here, they don't get anything.
The rail line had been blocked by residents who were angry at a shuttle bus contract being taken off a local company. Some had clashed with police who tried to clear the tracks. The protesters decried local authorities, who they say refused to listen.
We are not criminals. We are residents of this area. We are not carrying machetes or knives. We are not attacking anyone. But unfortunately, no authority is listening to us. What can we do?
Authorities had managed to temporarily unblock the railway line on Monday night and allow 1,400 tourists to be evacuated, but others were not so lucky. Machu Picchu, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, has in recent times often been the scene of protests. The complex was closed for 25 days in January 2024 due to demonstrations over the impeachment and arrest of then-President Pedro.
Our local sports news, Premier League of Eswatini chairman Polycarp Dlamini says, according to their records, Mbabane Swallows was registered back in 2012 as Mbabane Swallows Association FC. He then detailed that this is in light of the ongoing dispute over the ownership of the club between Mbabane Swallows Association FC and Mbabane Swallows FC Pty Ltd.
The Premier League of Eswatini Executive Committee has met with the Executive Committee of the Mbabane Swallows FC Pty Ltd about the ongoing dispute of the club ownership at Squaqa House in Mbabane.
Nayiphela isizini yaka MTN
kwaba ngisona leso sakhumbula kuthi hey siyi-PTY Ltd solo sime lapho sithi thine lo
Expressing himself on behalf of Mbabane Swallows FC Pty Ltd, Begi Giniza from Mbabane Swallows FC Pty Ltd says their visit was in line with the agreement to give them power over the club as promised prior to the beginning of last season.
I-team utawubate badlali labaresign-ako baye kulamanye amathimu ngoba abakaphatheki kahle emathimini.
In response, Premier League of Eswatini Chairperson Polycarp Dlamini says they do not have powers as executive to hand over leadership to clubs as per mandated by the Constitution.
The Constitution lesinayo lethi i-team association yalena I think nangikhumbula kahle ya legcina ifakwa kumanani I think.
On top of that, the chairperson Polycarp Dlamini says according to their records, the club was registered in 2012 as Mbabane Swallows Association FC, and it was registered by the late Chief Executive Officer Subsiso Manana.
Sa-acknowledge ukuthi nanifika la office ukuthi team kwakune-PTY ngicabanga ukuthi ngiko lesikukhulumayo lokungasiwo amaqiniso.
The Premier League has, however, promised to bring them together with the Mbabane Swallows Association FC for discussion on the future of the club. For Eswatini TV Sports, Fabisum Sonera, Mbabane.
The future of the labour market, the conversation between myself and the Chief Executive of Business Eswatini, Inati Dlamini, after the break. That is the triangular employment, jobs, justice, and the future of Eswatini's labour market.
Eswatini TV has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Eswatini Communications Commission. We are committed to reporting news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that does not amount to hate speech or the description of gratuitous violence or explicit sex. For any complaints of our programming, please contact us on 2411-9600 or email info@eswatinitv.co.za. You can also contact the Eswatini Communications Commission on 2406-7000 or write a letter to ECCOM on PO Box 7811 Mbabane. Email address is info@ecom.org.sz.
Lesinye isikhathi ngaphandle kwalesi
abaresearche bafunze being risky kwenza ukuthi nalokuwa kwayo kulula
nathi kufuna sente ukukhiqiza lokusembili.
When you choose your adventures, you do so with an open heart and a desire for the unexpected. You embark on journeys to discover new worlds full of wonder. You choose a path to awaken your senses, a world to make you look up and realize just how inspiring this life can be. Arrive and awaken your heart. Explore life in ways only thought possible in your dreams. Discover just how far you'll go to expand your understanding of life's greatest mysteries. There's just one place on this planet with so much to offer. Now is the time for you to have the royal experience.
Right, thank you for staying with us. 34 minutes after 7, you're still watching Kusile Breakfast Show. We get into our second interview segment now, and we want to zoom in on a new report that has shaken Eswatini's business community to its core. Section 129 of the Employment Bill, which seeks to outlaw triangular employment arrangements linking companies, labor brokers and workers. But Business Eswatini's new analysis paints a sobering picture. More than 20,000 jobs at risk, hundreds of millions in severance liabilities, and entire sectors from sugar, forestry, security services staring down collapse. And of course, the choice before Eswatini could not be more stark: regulate or prohibit. Business Eswatini insists that outright prohibition is reckless, unconstitutional, and contrary to international best practice. Instead, they urge smart regulation that is aligned with ILO Convention 181, protection workers without collapsing enterprises. Will Parliament listen before the country walks into a jobs and business catastrophe? Let's talk to the Chief Executive, the man at the center of the storm, Inhati Dlamini, the Chief Executive of Business Eswatini. Good morning. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah.
And thank you to your viewers for tuning in to this very important conversation.
I appreciate that you're smiling when I just premised our conversation with such concerning numbers. But I suppose sometimes you just have to laugh within the storm.
Yes, you have to laugh through this.
Your report as Business Eswatini, that is, projects 20,000 direct and indirect job losses. That is, if triangular employment is banned. Very, very sobering given the context of our unemployment crisis in the Kingdom of Eswatini. I think that for me, that's what struck me the most. But put this into perspective for us. Just how devastating would this be for Eswatini's already fragile labor market?
Look, it's not just only sobering. It is very, very troubling.
Right.
This is an evidence-based research work that was highly rigorous in our search for the data and information. It involved talking to the players themselves involved in this business across the whole country, across all the cities that they're based in. And a very, very, very troubling outcome. Yes, we are looking at losing over 20,000 jobs.
That's a lot.
20,000. And then on top of that, there are 8,000 indirect jobs that could be lost by this prohibition. You are well aware, the bill as it stands right now before Parliament, you can tell that there were good intentions in crafting it.
Right.
And we want to really congratulate government for that. And then somehow, maybe they lost the plot on Section 129. I don't know what happened.
Right.
Because if you read Section 129, Clause 1, it says, I prohibit this thing with immediate effect. And then Section 129, Clause 2, it says, by the way, in 12 months' time, none of these businesses should exist. Now imagine a private agency that's hiring 600 permanent employees. And he probably holds a contract to supply labor for the next 5 years. The law says, within 12 months, I don't want you here. I want all 600 people who will have been employed for the next 5 years full time. Send them home. And then it says, Section 129, Clause 3. And then it says, By the way, if the companies would like to hire people, you give this triangular employees the first preference. It's illegal, that too. It's just illegal.
Let's look at the sectoral realities, because the report highlights sugar, it highlights forestry, it highlights security, and they emerge as what we can call ground zero for this impact, right?
Ground zero.
Why are these industries especially exposed, and what ripple effects would prohibition have on the communities and the households that depend on them?
In fact, you've nailed it right. I think primary industries will be forestry, agriculture, sugarcane, and then manufacturing. Because of the nature of their business, they really take a lot, hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of contract labor. Why? Because some of them are seasonal. For instance, sugarcane, you only harvest it seasonally.
Right.
You probably need labor for 4 months, which means as a company you cannot hire 3,000 people permanently because you don't harvest the whole year. So you need contract labor for that, and it's been working well. The whole world uses this model. And then you have forestry. Same scenario. If you go look at their operations, they work almost along, akin to sugarcane companies, some manufacturing. So you're talking about thousands and thousands of people who are employed under the triangular employment. By the way, including some of my relatives. And I keep watch. They make sure that they don't get abused. And I appreciate that, because if they were not under the triangular employment, they become my problem. Uncle Nati, give me that. Uncle Nati, give me that. But thankfully, we have this, what you call triangular employment, which also gives, because most of it is sometimes young people, it gives them professional experience. It gives them the opportunity that after working there, they have a shot at getting proper full-time employment elsewhere.
100%. And the financial domino effect then comes into play there, because, this report warns of a looming liquidity crisis with over 250 million emalangeni in severance liabilities. That is 68% default risk among employers. It's just quite crazy. How close are we, in your view, to a systemic financial shock if this law passes indeed?
If it were to pass today, and God forbid, it will be tantamount to taking a gun and shooting ourselves in the foot, and they'll say, what for? Because, like I'm talking about, we're not talking about just tens or scores of people here, we're talking about thousands. And then you tell a company that's holding, for instance, 5-year contract to supply labor, you say shut down now. One thing they tell you is, by the way, if I let them go within the next 12 months, I haven't saved enough money for severance pay, which means I will default. I will send them home empty-handed. And if you look at the debts these employees have with banks, which means they will default on their loans. And if they default on their loans, banks will experience what they call NPL, non-performing loans. The domino effect of this in the economy is unfathomable. It's totally unimaginable, just because of one legislation gone wrong. That's what we're talking about. And we are talking about millions and millions here, which are involved, on top of potentially thousands and thousands of job losses as well.
Yeah, and it's about 28,000 if we look at direct and indirect.
And indirect is 28,000.
Yeah.
And now imagine a situation like this. Sometimes, it helps to do things in context. You have 1.2 million people in this country. You have around 160,000 people in total in the whole country. You're talking about in informal employment, which means probably 110,000 people in the private sector. Government hires 45,000. Okay, that's 160,000. The question is, what's the other million doing in this country? you will argue and say probably 350,000 are still in school, but that still leaves 700,000 people. What do they do when they wake up in the morning? You can say some of them are in formal employment, yes. Some of them are doing side houses here and there. But you're talking about hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people unemployed. And on top of that, you come with a legislation to add another 28,000 on top of that alarming figure of unemployment. 36% in the whole country unemployed. 58% of young people unemployed. And you come with Section 129, says, I will make this situation worse. And I know for sure government, it wasn't their intention, honestly, and I know that they're sincere. But on this one, they're just so sincerely wrong. And we said, when we conducted the study, we could have kept it quiet. But we said, no, let us go out there and warn people and warn government. And I'm sure they will listen and say, that wasn't their intention. Let us relook at this and reconfigure it in line with your research. And that's what we're praying they'll be doing.
Yeah, and I think the numbers that you have just articulated are even more troubling. And like you said, sobering is one thing, but troubling. Once we give the context that nearly 60% of our young population is unemployed, and then we take away 28,000, give or take, more jobs, that is even more troubling. But I think Business Eswatini is emphatic with the statement, regulate, do not prohibit. And I want us to get into that, because what I want to understand is what would be a balanced sort of regulatory framework look in practice, you know, and how does aligning with the ILO Convention 181 offer as a safe alternative?
You're really spot on that. And please allow me, because your viewers they need to understand this. And you mentioned ILO Convention 180 now. I want to talk about that. But there used to be another convention called ILO Convention 96, which was passed in 1951, right?
Sure.
The country, the Kingdom of Eswatini, ratified Convention 96 passed in 1951. They have not ratified Convention 181. Convention 181 was passed in fact, 19th of June, 1997. We, as employers, we were in Geneva. We voted for that Convention 188. Government was there. They voted for Convention 188. The labor movement, they were there. They voted for it. It seeks to repeal Convention 96, which the country ratified. And now the country is here to ratify Convention 181. Under Convention 181, the ILO says, we are aware that the progress being made in business and the landscape has changed dramatically to the point that we need private agencies, labor agencies, in order to meet the demands of business. They are permissible. But we are saying, please, can you regulate them? Can you license them? And in your licensing, can you put performance standards? Can you ensure that these labor agencies, they ensure that employees have equal rights, they have collective bargaining within that. And by the way, we love it, because just in case there's a rogue employment agency, we will be the first as Business Eswatini to call them out. And we like that. We're saying, government, Convention 181 is providing the answer for you. Why don't you follow it instead of following a law that that's from 1951, which will, by the way, be abrogated in 2 years' time, which means it will be repealed completely. And yet we're taking a legislation to Parliament that actually honors the tenets of Regulation 96, which will be repealed. Why take our beautiful country backwards when the whole country is going that way?
It's interesting indeed. The regional and international lessons they're in, because Namibia tried prohibition. Its courts struck it down, right? South Africa regulates with joint liability. What lessons should Eswatini's lawmakers be drawing from these experiences? They are pretty right next to us. They are not far.
Yeah, you've got your facts in your fingertips. Thank you very much. You mentioned Namibia. In fact, Namibia, it was a court case against employment agency versus the government of Namibia. It happened in 1999. The government of Namibia lost the case in the Supreme Court because one of the predicates of that loss was because of Convention 181, which had been passed in Geneva on the 19th of June, 1997. You see, so this happens 3 years apart. They say, no, you cannot disallow these agencies to function on the basis of ILO Convention 181, which was passed on the 19th of June, 1997. So from then, they are permissible. They're doing the same thing, regulating them. South Africa, same scenario. They are regulating them, ensuring that they comply with the rules. What's the other country that you mentioned? At Botswana, same situation. So we have countries that we can look up to see how it works for them, and we think it works well. It creates jobs, and yes, the jobs are flexible, but it allows the youth to gain much needed work experience through these arrangements as their path to full-time employment. It works well, but you have to regulate it. Trust me, if there was an agency exploiting people here, like I told you, I've got relatives in all these agencies. Trust me, I'll be the first one to come in Russia to call them more public and say, look who's doing to my own cousin.
Right.
Yeah. So I've got relatives, and I'm thankful for the opportunity they provide to our relatives to gain work experience, and it's working well. And I think our government should really reconsider just only that section 129, clause 1, 2, 3. The rest of the legislation looks good. And we say congratulations to government.
I do want to say, given the context of the mandate of Business Eswatini, I suppose every Liswati that stands to be a victim of such developments becomes your cousin, if you really think about it. But let's look at the workers' lens.
My cousins, indeed.
100%. I mean, critics argue, and this is the workers' lens now, they argue that triangular employment exposes workers to exploitation. And I think we've established that in our conversation this morning. How do you ensure that under regulation now, workers' rights are not just preserved, but they're also strengthened? I think that's critical.
I think that's a running mantra for years. You've heard that these agencies exploit, and it's been repeated so many times. And sometimes when you repeat an untruth so many times, it becomes perceptibly the truth. No, it's not true.
Yeah.
There is no exploitation. You take away, by the way, even if you can say you ban it today, it's over. Trust me, people are desperate out there. They will be coming under the table to make arrangements. I need the job on the sugarcane field. I need a job with the forestry.
100%.
Which means now we are opening the room for more exploitations. Under agencies which are regulated, and the state oversight over those agencies, in fact, workers are more protected under that arrangement or an arrangement which is just running rampant without any state control. Again, I would say no. It's wrong. I've heard it said so many times, but it doesn't mean because it's been said so many times it makes it true. It's patently false.
Right. I mean, you've called prohibition unconstitutional. Section 32, subsection 1 of Eswatini's constitution guarantees the right to engage in lawful trade. How serious is this legal contradiction, and do you expect it to be tested in court?
Yeah, in fact, there is, it is section 32, I think clause 1 of 2005, a constitution of the supreme law of the land. Yes, it says everyone has a right to engage in lawful trade
Absolutely.
and business, as long as it's legally registered. And we talk about employment agencies.
Yes.
They are legally registered. They have a right, and no one has a right to come and stop them. So if the law passes as it is, not only are you opening up a legal jeopardy for Parliament, you're opening up a legal jeopardy for the whole country. Because trust me, on the basis of our constitution, government would lose the case, and damages will have to pay to this myriad of these agencies, millions that they would have lost in foregone income, and business and contracts that would have been stopped. It could amount to millions. And we are saying, why would you open this country to this legal jeopardy when there is another viable alternative, which is Convention 181? We all voted for it. The unions voted for it. Government did. Can't we just follow it and fix this problem?
Right.
Yeah, this problem is fixable.
Right.
It's not hard, but it just needs political will, and we are willing to assist government to get the ball over the line.
It just needs political will and dialogue. And I want to take from that, because I suppose government appears determined to push ahead. And what is your message to Parliament today? And how do you propose constructive dialogue that will protect workers while also allowing businesses to survive?
Look, I would say to Parliament, they represent constituencies who would be affected by this bill.
Yeah.
And I would beg them to read through this carefully and see the implication of this legislation going forward if they say aye to it. And they can say that. But all they need to do for now is accept the whole legislation. But when they get to Section 129, Clause 1 and 2 and 3, just delete it and put that agencies will be permissible under ILO Convention 181, which means we'll have a perfect law that everybody accepts. It protects the jobs from their constituency level. Everybody's happy. Businesses will thrive. Young people will continue to be employed to gain experience to this arrangement. We really humbly beseech them, delete Section 129. It's not in the best interest of this country. It's not in the best interest of the development agenda of government. It has to be deleted.
And I suppose your parting shot is, again, regulate, do not prohibit. And again, I suppose everything that you've just said right now in terms of, what then this does in terms of modernizing our Eswatini's labor market, what it does for, attracting investment, so to speak, as well as ensuring long-term competitiveness. There's a lot of benefits there.
There's a lot of benefit, yeah. Like I said, Convention 181, it modernizes the whole business landscape in keeping with the ethos of the ILO, to which we are a party. So it also opens room for the creation of more jobs, especially flexible jobs. And the potential victims of not adopting that, you will be really destroying the youth, especially the women, because they're cleaning services in sectors. I've made an example with security. I have a private security in my house, Kusile. They look after my house at night. They've been doing that for the past 20 years. If this law comes into effect, you have to close Kusile. They say, I must hire the guard. I'm not going to hire the guard.
I suppose let's make examples of those, jobs that will be lost. So guard alert, our sisters who clean.
Okay. I'll make an example, and I'll make one which is more personal. The service I use, guard alert. There's a guy who comes in at 6 o'clock at my house. I feed him by 7. He also goes to sleep. I'm used to it. 18 years, I pay for that service. But I can put cameras on my house. If this legislation were to come to place today, I'll get rid of the guard because I cannot hire him. I don't even have, I don't know what the gadgets they use, who they talk to. I don't have the infrastructure. I'll say, so go away. I'll put cameras in my house. I can monitor those cameras on my phone, right? Good. And you go to a forestry a company and it says, okay, we are taking out 5,000 jobs. I'm going to Germany. I'm going to automate all my processes anyway because you are forcing me to do that, which means all those jobs lost, they're never coming back. So you talk about the cleaning. We have huge buildings here in Baban, and we have these ladies who come in at 4 a.m. to clean all the buildings. That's a triangular labor. And you are saying to me, no, you don't want that. Each office must have their own cleaner. Can you imagine how many offices in one building? Thousands. We think people can do that. Again, it's just totally unworkable. Cleaning services, security guards, and it's thousands of those people we hire. Some of them we don't even need, but we do it because it's part of contributing to the employment situation in the country. And then you have forestry. You should see them when you go to a forestry company. You'll find thousands
I'm
of
from
them.
Hlangano.
Yeah, in Hlangano you see.
And dangerous.
And dangerous.
Right.
We shouldn't do that.
Inati Dlamini, Chief Executive of Business Eswatini, very candid conversation that we've had here. He did say that in the beginning they've done rigorous research and that has given them empirical evidence that you may want to debate. But indeed, at the heart of this is not just a policy debate, but it's whether thousands of livelihoods are preserved or lost. So Business Eswatini says, let's regulate. We should not prohibit. Parliament now holds the pen and the country waits to see which path they will choose. Thank you for tuning in to Kusile Breakfast Show, the Thursday edition. Have a good day. Bye-bye.